If you have ever prayed and felt like your words hit the ceiling and fell back down, Padre Pio knew exactly why. He could see it. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. He could literally see, with the spiritual eyes God gave him, the difference between a prayer that rises to heaven like incense and a prayer that falls to the ground like wet ash. And the difference had nothing to do with the words you said, nothing to do with how many rosaries you prayed, nothing to do with how long you knelt. The difference was something hidden inside your heart that you cannot see, that you have never been taught to look for, and that may be blocking every prayer you have spoken for years without your knowledge. If that thought makes you uncomfortable, good, it should, because Padre Pio said that more than half the prayers spoken by faithful Catholics every single day never reach heaven. More than half. Not the prayers of atheists, not the prayers of the indifferent, the prayers of people who go to Mass on Sunday, the prayers of people who own rosaries and prayer books and holy cards, the prayers of people who believe with all their hearts that God is listening. He is listening, but their prayers are not arriving. And the reason is something that Padre Pio spent 50 years trying to explain from behind the screen of the confessional at San Giovanni Rotondo. Something that most priests have never been trained to identify. Something that most spiritual directors have never been taught to address. And something that you, sitting wherever you are right now, may be suffering from at this very moment. This changed everything for me when I first understood it. For years, during the hardest season of my life, when David was undergoing treatment and the doctors kept revising their prognosis downward, I prayed more than I had ever prayed in my life. I prayed the rosary 3 times a day. I prayed novenas. I prayed the chaplet of divine mercy every afternoon at 3 o'clock. I prayed with a ferocity that I thought would move mountains. And nothing happened. Not nothing dramatic. Nothing at all. It was as if I was speaking into a void, as if the ceiling of our bedroom had become a barrier that my words could not penetrate. And I began to wonder, in the dark hours of the night, when David was asleep and I was alone with my fear, whether God had gone deaf, or worse, whether he was listening and choosing not to answer. When I learned what Padre Pio taught about blocked prayer, I understood for the first time that the problem was not God's ears. The problem was my mouth. Or rather, the problem was what was hiding behind my mouth, in the deepest chamber of my heart, where I had locked away something I did not want God to see. In the autumn of 1953, a woman named Silvana Morano traveled from Benevento to San Giovanni Rotondo. She was 58 years old, a widow. Her husband, Arturo, had been killed in the war, in the fighting near Cassino in 1944. He had been a carpenter, a gentleman with large hands and a quiet voice who built furniture during the week and sang in the church choir on Sundays. They had been married for 16 years when a German shell landed on the stone farmhouse where his unit was sheltering, and Arturo Morano ceased to exist in this world between one heartbeat and the next. Silvana had 2 children, Emanuele, who was 19 in 1953 and working as an apprentice electrician in Naples, and Rosalia, who was 16 and still at home. Since Arturo's death 9 years earlier, Silvana had turned to prayer the way a drowning person turns to anything that floats. She prayed the rosary 3 times a day, morning, midday, and evening. She prayed at the kitchen table where Arturo used to sit, in the chair that still bore the impression of his weight in the worn leather cushion. She prayed for his soul. She prayed for Emanuele, who was drifting from the church the way young men in Naples often did, pulled by the current of the city into waters that Silvana could not navigate from her small apartment in Benevento. She prayed for Rosalia, who was quiet and obedient, but whose eyes sometimes held a sadness that frightened Silvana because she recognized it. It was the same sadness she saw in the mirror every morning. 9 years of prayer, 27 rosaries a day, if you count each set of 5 decades, thousands upon thousands of Hail Marys, enough Our Fathers to fill a library. And in those 9 years, nothing had changed. Emanuele was still drifting, Rosalia was still sad, Silvana was still alone. Arturo's soul, as far as she could tell, was still somewhere between this world and the next, waiting for the prayers that Silvana sent up 3 times a day like messages in bottles thrown into an ocean that never sent anything back. She had heard about Padre Pio from her sister-in-law, Concertina, who had visited San Giovanni Rotondo the previous year and come back transformed. Concertina said that Padre Pio had looked at her in the confessional and told her things about her soul that no human being could know, things she had never spoken aloud, things she had barely admitted to herself. And Concertina said that after her confession with Padre Pio, the weight she had been carrying for 20 years lifted in a single afternoon, like someone had opened a window in a room that had been sealed shut. So Silvana went. She took the train from Benevento to Foggia and then the bus up the mountain road to San Giovanni Rotondo. She arrived on a Tuesday morning and joined the line outside the Church of Our Lady of Grace. The line was already stretching around the corner of the building and down the stone steps toward the road. She waited. She waited through the morning and through the afternoon and through the evening. She ate the bread and cheese she had brought in her bag. She drank water from the fountain in the courtyard. She prayed her midday rosary, standing in line, the beads clicking softly against each other as her fingers moved through the decades with the automatic precision of someone who had done this 10,000 times. She was not nervous. She was tired, not physically tired, though she was that too after standing for 10 hours. Soul tired. The kind of tiredness that comes from doing the same thing every day for 9 years and seeing no result. The kind of tiredness that is the first cousin of despair. She did not want to despair. She knew that despair was a sin. But she was so tired of praying into silence that she was beginning to wonder whether she had been doing it wrong all along. Whether there was a secret to prayer that everyone else knew and no one had told her. Whether God answered some people and not others, and she was simply one of the others. Hold on, because what Padre Pio told Silvana that evening in the confessional is something that I have never heard any priest explain, and it changed my understanding of every prayer I had ever prayed. When Silvana finally knelt in the confessional, it was past 8 in the evening. The church was nearly empty. The candles in the side chapels had burned low. The air smelled of incense and old stone and the particular kind of exhaustion that comes from a place where hundreds of people have poured out their souls over the course of a single day. She began her confession the way she always did. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. She listed her sins, small sins, impatience with Rosalia, unkind thoughts about a neighbor, missing her morning prayers twice because she overslept, the ordinary inventory of an ordinary Catholic life. Padre Pio listened, and then he said, "Those are not why you came." Silvana stopped. He was right. Those were not why she came. "Tell me," he said, "tell me what is really on your heart." And Silvana, who had not spoken honestly about her spiritual life to anyone in 9 years, began to cry. She said, "Father, I pray every day. 3 rosaries a day for 9 years. I pray for my husband's soul. I pray for my children. I pray for myself. And God does not hear me. Nothing changes. Nothing moves. I'm talking to a wall. And I'm so tired of talking to a wall that I'm afraid I'm going to stop praying altogether. And if I stop praying, I have nothing left. Because prayer is the only thing I have been holding on to since Arturo died. And if prayer does not work, then I do not know what holds the world together." Padre Pio was silent for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was different from what Silvana expected. She expected comfort. She expected him to say, "God always hears, keep praying, do not lose faith," the standard reassurance, the spiritual equivalent of a pat on the head. Instead, he said, "I can see your prayers." Silvana did not understand. She said, "What do you mean?" He said, "God has given me the ability to see prayers, not all the time, but often. When a soul is praying near me, I can sometimes see the prayer as it leaves the soul. And there are two kinds. One kind rises. It rises like incense, like smoke from blessed charcoal on a feast day. It rises in a straight column, golden at the edges, and it passes through the ceiling and through the roof and through the sky, and it reaches the throne of God, and it enters his ears the way a child's voice enters the ears of a loving father. God does not merely hear this prayer, he feels it. It touches him, it moves him, and he responds, not always the way the person expects, but he responds. Always. The other kind, Padre Pio said, does not rise. It leaves the soul, and it goes up a few inches, sometimes a few feet, and then it stops. It hangs in the air like fog, and then it begins to fall, like wet ash, like soot from a cold chimney. It falls back down onto the soul that sent it, and it lies there, heavy and grey. And over time, as the person keeps praying these prayers that do not rise, the grey accumulates. The soul becomes covered in it, buried in it, until the person is praying from beneath a mound of their own unanswered prayers, and the mound itself has become the barrier that prevents the next prayer from rising. Silvana felt the blood drain from her face. She whispered, "Which kind are mine?" And Padre Pio said, with a gentleness that was more devastating than any harshness could have been, "Your prayers have not risen in a very long time, my daughter." Silvana began to weep, not the gentle crying she had done before, a deep, shuddering weeping that came from the place in her chest where she had stored 9 years of unanswered questions. She said, "But why? What am I doing wrong? I pray the right words. I pray the right number of decades. I hold the rosary the right way. I pray at the right times. What am I doing wrong?" Padre Pio said, "You are doing everything right on the outside. The problem is not your hands or your lips or your beads. The problem is here." And even though they were separated by the screen of the confessional, Silvana knew he was pointing at his heart. He said, "There are 3 things that block prayer from rising, 3 invisible walls that stand between the soul and God. Most Catholics have at least one of them. Many have 2. Some, like you, have all 3. And until these walls are removed, it does not matter how many rosaries you pray. It does not matter if you pray 100 a day. The prayers will leave your mouth and they will fall. Few Catholics know this, but what Padre Pio described next is a spiritual diagnosis that I have never found in any catechism or prayer book. It is not heretical. It does not contradict any teaching of the Church. But it is not taught. It is the kind of knowledge that only comes from someone who has actually seen the spiritual world with their own eyes, and Padre Pio had seen it. Every day, for 50 years. The first wall, he told Silvana, is called La Preghiera Condizionata, the conditional prayer. This is the prayer that says, "God, I will pray to you, but only if you answer the way I expect." The prayer that sets terms, the prayer that negotiates, the prayer that says, "I am asking for this specific outcome, and if you do not deliver this specific outcome, then the prayer has failed, and you have failed, and I have wasted my time." Padre Pio said to Silvana, "When you pray for Arturo's soul, what exactly do you pray for?" Silvana said, "I pray that he is in heaven, that he is at peace, that he is not suffering." "And do you trust God's answer?" Padre Pio asked. Silvana hesitated. She wanted to say yes, but the truth was more complicated. The truth was that she prayed for Arturo's peace while simultaneously refusing to accept any answer except the specific confirmation she wanted. She wanted a sign, a dream, a voice, something tangible, something that would satisfy her doubt. And because God had not given her the specific sign she demanded, she had concluded that he was not answering, when in fact, Padre Pio said God had answered many times. Through the peace she felt at communion, through the moments of unexpected joy that came to her in the middle of grief, through the quiet certainty that sometimes descended on her at 3 in the morning when she woke, and the room was dark and still, and something in the air felt like presence. God had been answering, but Silvana had been rejecting the answers because they did not match the form she had specified. This is the conditional prayer, Padre Pio said. It rises a few inches and then it stops, because the soul is not really praying to God. It is issuing instructions to God, and God does not take instructions. He gives grace, and grace comes in forms that the human mind cannot predict and often does not recognize. The second wall, Padre Pio told Silvana, is called La Preghiera Mascherata, the masked prayer. This is the most dangerous of the three, because the person praying it does not know it is masked. The masked prayer is the prayer that speaks words of love to God, while the heart holds something else entirely. Praise on the lips, bitterness in the chest. Glory be to the Father, while anger burns in the stomach. Hail Mary, full of grace, while resentment coils around the spine like a vine around a fence post. Padre Pio asked Silvana a question that she did not expect. He said, "Are you angry at God?" Silvana said, "No, of course not." Padre Pio said, "You are lying. Not to me, to yourself. You are furious at God. You have been furious at him for 9 years, since the day he took Arturo. You have dressed your fury in prayer. You have covered it with rosaries. You have wrapped it in novenas and chaplets and intentions and offerings. But underneath all of it, in the deepest chamber of your heart, there is a woman who is enraged at the God who allowed a German shell to land on a stone farmhouse and take away the only man she ever loved. And that rage is so terrifying to you that you have never allowed yourself to feel it. You have pushed it down and sealed it shut and built a cathedral of prayer on top of it. And every prayer you have prayed for 9 years has been spoken from the roof of that cathedral, which is very high and very impressive. But the foundation is made of fury, and God can see the foundation. He can always see the foundation. Silvana could not speak, because Padre Pio was right. She knew it the way you know something you have spent years trying not to know. The way you know a truth that you have buried so deep that you forgot you buried it, until someone with spiritual vision reaches down and pulls it up by the roots and holds it in front of your face and says, This is what has been blocking everything. Hold on, because the third wall is the one that shocked me the most, and it may be the one that is blocking your prayers right now. The third wall, Padre Pio said, is called La Preghiera Meccanica, the mechanical prayer. This is the prayer that is technically perfect and spiritually dead. The lips move, the fingers count the beads, the words come out in the correct order, but the soul is not present. The soul is somewhere else, thinking about dinner, worrying about the children, replaying a conversation from yesterday, planning tomorrow. The body is kneeling, but the soul is standing up and walking around the room, touching everything except God. Padre Pio said, Silvana, when you pray your morning rosary, where is your mind? And Silvana, who had just had 2 walls of her spiritual life exposed in the space of 5 minutes, did not have the strength left to lie. She said, most mornings my mind is on the laundry, or on what Rosalia needs for school, or on whether Emanuele has eaten breakfast. Padre Pio said, you have prayed approximately 10,000 rosaries in 9 years. How many of them were you fully present for? Silvana thought about it honestly. The answer was devastating. Perhaps 100, she whispered, perhaps less. Padre Pio said, a single Hail Mary prayed with the full attention of the soul is worth more than 10,000 rosaries prayed while the mind wanders. God is not a meter that counts words. He is a Father who counts presence. And when your daughter comes to you and says, "Mother, I need you," but her eyes are looking at something else, and her mind is somewhere else, and she is speaking to you the way she speaks to the shopkeeper, out of habit, without engagement, without presence, do you feel heard, or do you feel like a wall she is talking at? Silvana said nothing, because she understood. For the first time in 9 years, she understood why her prayers felt like they hit the ceiling. They were not hitting the ceiling. They were not even getting that high. They were leaving her mouth and falling to the ground like wet ash because they were conditional and masked and mechanical. They were prayers in form, but not in substance. They had the shape of prayer without the soul of prayer. They were beautiful empty vessels sent to God, and God was not fooled by beautiful vessels. He was looking for what was inside them, and inside Silvana's prayers for 9 years there had been conditions, rage, and absence. I need to tell you something, because this is the part that broke me open. I recognized all 3 walls in my own prayer life, not 9 years of them, but months. During David's illness, I prayed conditional prayers every single night. God, heal David, specifically heal David in the way I want, on the timeline I have decided, and if you do not, I will know you are not there. That was my prayer, dressed in Hail Marys, wrapped in decades of the rosary. But at its core, it was an ultimatum, not a prayer, and the masked prayer. Oh, the masked prayer. I stood in the chapel at Walsgrave Hospital at 2 in the morning, saying the words of the Our Father while my stomach burned with a rage so hot I could taste it. Thy will be done. I said those words while every cell in my body was screaming, no, not thy will, my will. I want my husband back. I want my life back. I want this to stop. And the mechanical prayer. Every evening rosary I prayed beside David's hospital bed, while my eyes watched the monitors and my mind counted his breaths and my fingers moved through the beads without a single thought touching God. I was present in the room. I was absent from the prayer. Now here is the part that changes everything, because Padre Pio did not just diagnose Silvana, he healed her. And the way he did it reveals something about prayer that connects all 3 walls to a single hidden root. And when you see the root, the walls begin to fall. Padre Pio said to Silvana, "Do you know what all 3 walls have in common?" Silvana shook her head. He said, "In all 3, the soul is facing the wrong direction. In the conditional prayer, the soul faces its own desire. In the masked prayer, the soul faces its own wound. In the mechanical prayer, the soul faces its own world. In all 3 cases, the soul is turned toward itself. The prayer is self-referential. It begins with the self and returns to the self. It never leaves the orbit of the self. And a prayer that doesn't leave the orbit of the self cannot reach God. Because God is not inside your orbit. God is the center of a different orbit entirely. And to pray truly, you must leave your orbit and enter His. Padre Pio called this il capovolgimento, the overturning. He said that true prayer requires the soul to turn itself inside out, to stop facing inward and start facing outward, toward God. Not toward the idea of God, not toward the image of God that you have constructed in your mind to match your expectations. Toward the actual, living, infinite God, who is not what you expect, and who does not answer the way you demand, and who is so much larger than your conditions and your anger and your distraction, that the idea of issuing Him instructions is as absurd as an ant issuing instructions to the sun. This is the hidden connection, Padre Pio told Silvana. This is the thread that runs through every blocked prayer I have ever seen. The soul is facing the wrong way. It thinks it is facing God because its lips are saying God's name. But the lips can face one direction while the heart faces another, and God reads the heart, always the heart, never the lips alone. Silvana said, "But how do I turn around? How do I face God when I do not know which direction He is in? When I am angry and grieving and tired and lost, how do I find the direction of God?" Padre Pio said, You do not find it. You surrender to it. You stop trying to navigate and you let yourself be turned. The way a compass needle does not choose to point north, it simply stops resisting and north finds it. And then Padre Pio did something that Silvana would remember for the rest of her life. He said, "We are going to pray together. Right now. One Hail Mary. Just one. But you are going to pray it differently than you have ever prayed anything in your life." He said, "First, put down your rosary, not because the rosary is wrong, because tonight I want nothing between your soul and God. No beads, no counting, no structure, just your voice and His presence." Silvana set her rosary on the ledge of the confessional. "Now," Padre Pio said, "before you speak a single word, I want you to do something. I want you to acknowledge what is in your heart. Not to me, to God. Say it silently. The conditions, the anger, the distraction, all of it. Do not confess it as a sin right now. Simply acknowledge it. Say, God, this is what I am carrying. This is the truth of my heart at this moment. I am angry, I am demanding, I am absent. This is what I bring to you. Not what I wish I were bringing. What I am actually bringing." Silvana closed her eyes, and for the first time in 9 years, she stopped performing prayer and started being honest with God. She did not dress anything up. She did not put her anger in liturgical language. She did not wrap her conditions in the formal structure of a novena. She simply said silently, in the privacy of her own soul, "God, I am furious at you for taking Arturo. I have been furious for 9 years. I've been praying at you, not to you. I've been demanding instead of asking. I've been present in body and absent in soul, and I'm exhausted, and I am here, and this is all I have." Padre Pio, who could see what was happening in the spiritual world, later told Brother Pellegrino that at the moment Silvana acknowledged her truth, he saw something change. The grey ash that had been piled around her soul, years of blocked prayers accumulated like dust, began to shift. Not dramatically, subtly, as if a wind had started to blow from a direction that had been still for a very long time. Now Padre Pio said, "Say the Hail Mary, but say each word as if you are saying it for the first and last time, as if this is the only prayer you will ever pray, as if after this there will be no more chances, no more beads, no more decades, just this one prayer. Give it everything." Silvana opened her mouth, "Hail Mary, full of grace." She said the words slowly, each one a stone placed carefully on a path. She did not rush to the next word. She did not think about what came after. She stayed with each word the way you stay with a person who is dying, fully present, fully attentive, fully there. "The Lord is with thee." And something happened that Silvana could not explain. At the word "with," she felt something, not an emotion, a presence, as if the space inside the confessional had changed, as if the air had become thicker, warmer, as if someone had entered the room who had not been there before, or who had always been there but whom she had never been still enough to notice. "Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus." At the name Jesus, Silvana began to cry again, but these were not the tears of frustration she had cried earlier. These were the tears of someone who has been wandering in a desert for 9 years and has just heard the sound of water. Not seen it yet, just heard it, just known with a certainty that came from somewhere deeper than the mind that water existed and was close. "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death." When she said the word "now," she meant it for the first time. Not now as a formality, now as in this moment, this breath, this heartbeat, right here, in this confessional, with this anger and this grief and this exhaustion. Now, pray for me now, as I am, not as I wish I were, not as I was before Arturo died, as I am right now, broken, honest, turned around, facing you for the first time in 9 years. Amen. Padre Pio was silent. Then he said softly, "Did you feel the difference?" Silvana could not speak. She nodded. The tears were streaming down her face, and she could not see and she did not care. Because yes, she had felt it. For the first time in 9 years, she had felt her prayer leave her soul and go somewhere. Not hit the ceiling, not fall to the ground. Rise the way Padre Pio described, like incense, like smoke from blessed charcoal, straight up, through the roof, through the sky, towards something infinite and loving and real that had been waiting patiently for 9 years for her to stop performing and start surrendering. One Hail Mary. That was all it took. Not 10,000 rosaries. One Hail Mary prayed with a heart that had finally turned around. Remember what Padre Pio said about the compass needle. This is the moment the needle stopped resisting, and North found it. You have now heard something that most Catholics will never hear. The spiritual mechanism behind blocked prayer, the 3 invisible walls, the hidden connection that links them all, and the single overturning, il capovolgimento, that dissolves all 3 at once. This channel exists to bring these buried truths back to the surface, to hand them to Catholics who are praying into silence and do not know why. The super thanks button below this video is not a donation. It is your way of saying these truths need to reach the woman in Benevento, the man in Detroit, the grandmother in Dublin, the teenager in Manila who is praying 3 rosaries a day and hearing nothing back. You are keeping these revelations alive. And Padre Pio said that those who spread divine truth receive a special protection that money cannot buy and the world cannot take away. Padre Pio gave Silvana something before she left the confessional that night. Not just absolution, though, he gave her that too. He gave her a practice, a daily ritual for rebuilding her prayer life from the foundation up. 5 steps, he said. Do these every day for 40 days, and on the 41st day you will not recognize your prayer life, because it will be alive. And a living prayer is as different from a dead prayer as a beating heart is different from a stone. The first step is the morning acknowledgement. Before you pray anything, before you touch your rosary, before you open your missal, sit in silence for 2 minutes and tell God exactly what you are carrying. Not what you think you should be carrying, what you are actually carrying. If you are angry, say I am angry. If you are distracted, say I am distracted. If you are grieving, say I am grieving. If you are numb, say I am numb. Begin every prayer with the truth, because truth is the soil in which prayer grows, and nothing grows in a lie, not even a prayer. The second step is the single decade. Do not pray 5 decades, not yet. Pray 1, a single decade. 10 Hail Marys and an Our Father, but pray it the way Silvana prayed that 1 Hail Mary in the confessional. Each word given your full attention, each word meant as if it were the only word you would ever say. Padre Pio said, I would rather you pray 1 decade with your whole soul than 50 decades with your lips only. Quality is not the enemy of quantity. Quality is the foundation that makes quantity meaningful. Build the foundation first. The building will come later. The third step is the evening question. At the end of each day, before you go to bed, ask yourself 1 question. Did I face God today, or did I face myself? This is the compass check. Every day the needle drifts. Every day the world pulls the soul back toward itself, back toward its own desires, its own wounds, its own distractions. The evening question is the daily recalibration. It keeps the needle pointing north. And over time, as you practice asking the question honestly, you begin to notice the drift earlier. You catch yourself facing the wrong direction at noon instead of midnight. Then at breakfast. Then at the moment it happens. Until one day, the turning becomes so natural that you do not need to ask the question anymore. But that day is far away. For now, ask the question every night. The fourth step is the weekly surrender. Once a week, on a day you choose, kneel before a crucifix and say out loud, God, I release my conditions. I release my outcomes. I release my timeline. I do not know what you are doing. I do not understand your plan. I do not see what you see, but I trust you, not because I feel trust, because I choose trust. And I choose it again today, out loud. Padre Pio was adamant about this. He said, "The devil can hear your spoken words, and he flees from them. He cannot hear your thoughts. A surrender spoken silently in the mind is powerful. A surrender spoken aloud in the presence of a crucifix is devastating to the enemy, because it is a public declaration that you are leaving your own orbit and entering God's. And the devil cannot follow you into God's orbit." The fifth step is the monthly confession, not because you have committed grave sin every month, because confession is the sacrament that clears the grey ash. It is the broom that sweeps away the accumulated weight of blocked prayers. Even if your prayers are beginning to rise, even if the three walls are coming down, the residue of years of dead prayer takes time to clear. Confession accelerates the clearing. It is a spiritual reset, a monthly fresh start. And Padre Pio, who heard more confessions than almost any priest in the history of the Church, said that regular confession does not just forgive sins. It strengthens the soul's ability to pray. Each confession removes a layer of grey. Each absolution opens the channel a little wider, until one day the channel is fully open and your prayers rise the way they were always meant to rise, without obstruction, without delay, straight to the ears of God. Silvana went home to Benevento and followed the 5 steps. She told no one what Padre Pio had said to her, not Rosalia, not Concertina, not anyone, because the truth he had revealed was too personal and too painful to share. But she followed the steps. Every morning, 2 minutes of honesty before touching her rosary. Every day, 1 decade prayed with total presence. Every evening, the compass question. Every Wednesday, the spoken surrender before the crucifix in her bedroom. And every first Saturday of the month, confession at the parish church in Benevento, whether she felt she needed it or not. The change did not come immediately. Padre Pio had told her 40 days, and for the first 2 weeks, nothing seemed different. She prayed her single decade and felt nothing. She acknowledged her anger and her grief, and nothing happened. She asked the evening question, and the answer was always the same. I faced myself today. Again. Still. She began to wonder if Padre Pio had been wrong, if the walls were too thick, if 9 years of dead prayer had built something so massive that 5 simple steps could not bring it down. But on the 17th day, something shifted. It was a Tuesday morning. She was sitting at the kitchen table in Arturo's chair, which she had started using for her morning acknowledgement because it felt like the most honest place in the house. And she said, as she had said every morning for 17 days, "God, I am angry." And for the first time, the anger was not as hot. It was still there, but it had loosened, like a knot that someone had been working on for weeks, and the first strand had come free. Not untied, just loosened, just enough to know that untying was possible. On the 29th day, during her single decade, she reached the 4th Hail Mary and realized she had been fully present for every word, not fighting to be present, not dragging her attention back from the laundry or the children or the shopping list. Simply present, the way you are present when someone you love is telling you something important, effortlessly attentive. And she felt the prayer rise, not dramatically, quietly, the way smoke rises from a candle in a room with no wind, straight up, without resistance. On the 40th day, Silvana woke before dawn. She sat in Arturo's chair. She began her morning acknowledgement, and instead of saying, "I am angry," she said something she had not planned to say. She said, "God, I miss him, and I trust you with him." That was the moment, the capovolgimento, the overturning. Not a dramatic vision, not a supernatural sign, just a widow in a kitchen in Benevento, in the chair her husband used to sit in, saying 6 words that contained no conditions, no mask, and no absence. I miss him, I trust you. Fully present, fully honest, fully turned toward God. Padre Pio, in a letter to one of the other friars, mentioned a woman from Benevento without naming her. He wrote, "There is a soul I heard in confession last autumn who came to me buried under 9 years of ashes. I have just received word through the Spirit that the ashes have cleared. Her prayers are rising now. Everyone, tell the young friars this. It is never too late for a prayer to learn to fly, even one that has been crawling on the ground for a decade." When Silvana died in 1971, at the age of 76, her daughter Rosalia found a small notebook in the drawer of the kitchen table. It was the notebook where Silvana had written her morning acknowledgements every day for 18 years. The first entry said, "God, I am furious at you, and I have been for 9 years." The last entry, written the morning of the day she died, said, "God, I am grateful." That is all. Grateful. 18 years, from fury to gratitude, from prayers that fell like wet ash to prayers that rose like incense, from a soul buried under the weight of its own blocked intentions to a soul that flew. And it started with one honest Hail Mary in a confessional in San Giovanni Rotondo, prayed by a woman who had finally stopped performing and started surrendering. Let me tell you what I do now, because of what I learned from Silvana's story. Every morning before I pick up my rosary, I sit in my armchair in Coventry and I close my eyes and I tell God exactly where I am. Some mornings I say, I am worried about the grandchildren. Some mornings I say, I am grateful for the sunrise. Some mornings I say, I do not feel you today, but I am here anyway. And then I pray 1 decade, just one, with everything I have. And I have found, over these months and years of practice, that 1 decade prayed with presence opens a door that 100 decades prayed with absence cannot even find. My prayer group at the parish noticed the difference before I did. Helen said to me one Thursday evening, "Margaret, something has changed about you. Your prayers feel different." And she was right. They do feel different, because they are different. They are honest, they are present, they are surrendered, and they rise. Here is the truth that Padre Pio spent 50 years trying to teach from behind the screen of his confessional. God hears every prayer, every single one, but not every prayer reaches him as prayer. Some reach him as noise, some reach him as demand, some reach him as absence dressed in words. And the only prayer that reaches him as prayer, the only prayer that touches his heart the way a child's voice touches a father's heart, is the prayer that comes from a soul that has turned around. A soul that has stopped facing itself and started facing him. A soul that has dropped its conditions and its masks and its distractions and has said with terrible, beautiful, liberating honesty, "Here I am, as I am, angry and grieving and distracted and broken and here." That is the prayer God hears. That is the prayer that rises. That is the difference Padre Pio saw between the incense and the ash. Not the words, not the beads, not the number of decades, the direction of the heart. Padre Pio once said, "Pray, hope, and do not worry." But he also said something that most people have never heard. He said, before you pray, be honest. Before you hope, surrender. And before you stop worrying, give God the worry itself. Do not hide it behind holy words. Hand it to him, uncovered, undecorated, raw, because God is not interested in your performance. He is interested in your presence. Give him that, and the rest will follow. Give him anything less, and you will be praying into a ceiling for the rest of your life. Are your prayers rising or falling? You know the answer. Deep down, in the part of your heart that cannot lie to itself, you know. If they are rising, thank God, and keep going. If they are falling, you now know why, and you now know what to do about it. The 5 steps. 40 days. Start tomorrow morning in the chair where you pray. Start with the truth and let God do the rest. Write rising in the comments if you believe your prayers reach heaven. Write turning if this video has shown you that something needs to change. And write the name of someone you know who is praying into silence, because this video may be the answer to a prayer they did not know they were blocking. Share it with them, not next week, today. Because Padre Pio saw what happens when we say next week, and next week, as you know by now, is not guaranteed to anyone.